Welcome to 30-Minute Reviews. I am 1 day later than usual because of a shifting work schedule. So let's start out. Let's talk about Dragonheart, this week's movie we're going to discuss. I'm not going to bury the lead, just jump right in. So I watched this movie. Basically what happens, I had to go to Walmart, and they have these collections where they have a bunch of movies for, dirt cheap. And the more of them I've never heard of, and the more of them have very little cast that I've heard of, the better. Last week we did 3022. This week we have Dragonheart. Because I picked it up, there were 5 movies from this franchise in one collection. And I was interested. I wanted to see what was this movie about? What was the thing about this? Because I had seen this, I've seen it at Walmart before, and there was more recently a new one had come out, but I didn't know anything about it. I figured it was one of those direct to DVD franchises that kind of just exists. So the first one has a pretty big cast, is one of the things I noticed. Jason Isaacs has a role, Sean Connery voices the dragon, Dennis Quaid is the hero, Dina Meyer plays is the lead female in the movie. Now, here's the thing about this movie. When I'm watching it, it should have been a bigger hit than it was. The effects aren't great, but you have to consider the fact that it came out in 1996. The effects are just a step below Jurassic Park. Let's say a few steps below Jurassic Park, the effects. So you're not looking at something that's, the dragon's, in daylight a lot, and they hadn't quite figured that you can mask it by putting it into darkness yet. So you have that. But the big thing with this is that it's a pretty good movie, and I think it's much like Birds of Prey. When I saw Birds of Prey, I had a similar kind of statement about it. The rating of Birds of Prey and the rating of this is incompatible with the target audience. Had this movie had a PG rating or a G rating, which it could have done, there was minimal amount of cuts that you could do to make this movie good for a PG. I think there's 1 or 2 kind of bloody scenes that they can kind of, if you do some easy editing, you can get that down to a PG with minimal effort. The issue is, it comes down to, does the director want to do that or anything like that? But this movie was rated PG-13 at release, and the audience for this movie is a kids movie. It'd be a great kids movie. So therein lies the initial problem with this, is that there's an incompatibility between the target audience and the rating. Because then they had with Birds of Prey, where the target audience could have been teenagers, but it was rated R, and it wasn't, and younger girls, but it was rated R, and it didn't quite hit because people didn't want to bring their kids to see that movie, because it was too gory, too much cursing, even if it's a fantastic movie. That's problem number 1. Problem number 2, I think Sean Connery was a bad choice. Not because Sean Connery is a bad actor, but because his voice, when you see that dragon, it doesn't quite mesh with the appearance of the dragon. It's also his voice is too iconic to an extent, where it's that's Sean. It takes you out of it as that's Sean Connery voicing a dragon. And then had this movie had a PG rating, I feel like it would have done better. And we would have had this, should have launched a franchise. But the other thing is, when I watch this movie, it's like looking into an alternate universe. That's what I tweeted when I was watching it. It's like looking into an alternate universe where Harry Potter never got made. And because if you look at what else came out, the year this came out, Independence Day, First Contact, and there were a few other science fiction movies that came out the same year. This movie, if I'm going to say that Harry Potter was probably the catalyzing incident that made it where this movie didn't spawn a franchise in theaters. The movie performed poorly at the box office, but had they made it PG, with minor edits. I think the only thing they need to really alter is that battle in the beginning that, bonds, I forgot the antagonist's name, but bonds him to Drago, whatever Sean Connery's name is in this movie. That fight, if it's cut down, and it's less gory, there's one scene where, the main antagonist gets hurt. If that happens, the movie works a lot better. Because basically the premise is, Dragon Slayer sets out to fight a dragon, they get stuck in a stalemate, and they have a company agreement, and they become friends, and they decide that they're going to con all the villages into, paying him to save the dragon, and saving them from the dragon. It's a pretty airtight concept, and it lends itself beautifully to being a children's movie, but the mismatch between the target audience and the rating doesn't quite mesh. I feel like had it been PG in 1996 when it came out, I may have seen this movie in theaters or owned it on VHS, but I didn't because it was PG-13, and I was too young for that. So my parents wouldn't have bought that for me. So that's kind of like this interesting thing, and I think that next week I'm going to talk about the first of the two direct-to-DVD prequels. Actually, it was direct-to-VHS prequel for it. I forgot the name of it, but that's going to be what I'm talking about next week, because it's interesting to see what they did and how deep does the lore with this world go, because it's like everyone's always clamoring for, we need IP, we need IP, we need IP. Universal's sitting on this. And it could be really good. And ILM did the effects at the time, and if we brought, I could see this working very well, especially today. In a world where we're talking about another Tron sequel with Jared Leto, I could see this working very well. So our next thing I want to talk about is Flashpoint. And what I saw that kind of, had me thinking was this Flashpoint movie's happening. Allegedly, they're not using the Flashpoint Batman. They're using Batman from Batman 89, which kind of has this weird situation now. Because let's break down what we have. The DCEU has largely been detached from DC's other live-action entries. It's been detached from the DC Universe shows. It's been detached from the CW shows. It's going to be detached from the HBO Max shows, from what I understand, like Green Lantern and things like that. But they're all kind of their own little standalone things. Fine. That's fine. I completely understand that, and it makes sense. They don't want to, interact with them. Here's the thing, though. A little thing happened late last year into early this year called Crisis on Infinite Earths on the CW, which kind of folded it all together in a weird way. It opens with, episode 1 opens with the destruction of a few worlds that we're familiar with. The destruction of the world from Titans, the destruction of the Earth 66, the Earth of Batman 66, and the death of Earth 89, the Earth from, Batman 89. And so that happens. Then, in part 4, once the entire multiverse is destroyed, Barry, at the vanishing point, enters the Speed Force with the Spectre, and, goes to try and find, the other, I forgot what it was he was trying to find while he was there. Either way, he's trying to find something. And he goes to, he ends up, going back to season 3 of Arrow, and in, and then Elseworlds, and he ends up accidentally showing up at Star Labs of another alternate Earth that shouldn't exist because, multiverse is destroyed, and he meets up with Ezra Miller's Flash. He's talking about how Vic said this was a possibility, and I guess he was right, referring to Ray Fisher's Cyborg, talking about, the possibility of there being a multiverse. Which my first thought when they announced they were doing, Flashpoint, is that now the explanation is that, he met Barry from Earth Prime now, and he met that Flash, and he goes, to, Because he sees that, he's like, I can travel through universes, maybe I can go back in time too. He goes back in time, saves his mother from dying, causes Flashpoint. Which is cool. I like that idea. Even if I did make it up myself. So, he does that. Okay? And I like this, the reason why I like this idea is on the CW, when they did Flashpoint on The Flash, which was a mistake doing it the way they did. They should have, I said it at the time, but they should have let off Season 3 of The Flash, Season 2 of Supergirl, Season 1 of whatever. They should have let off with Flashpoint being the crossover. And merge the universes at that point. But that's neither here nor there. So, at the end of Part 2, Jay pulls him out of the Speed Force, brings him to a diner, and there's the scene with the mug, where he breaks the mug, and he puts the piece back in, and he goes, see, the piece is back in, but it's never going to be the same as it was. And every time you time travel, you do that. And I want the series to end with, the Flash movie to end with that. But here's the weird thing. Both of these are, now, in the grand scheme of things, on separate universes. So, when they remerge the universes post-Crisis, I think what they're going to have to acknowledge is that they merged Earth 89 into the DCEU universe with that, and the way that it happened is Flashpoint. And the other thing that this does is there's rumblings online about them doing a Rebirth movie. I don't think a Rebirth movie would work, considering that the thing that caused the universe realignment with Flashpoint was not explicitly Barry going back in time, but it was the interceding of Dr. Manhattan going in and fucking with the timeline. And had Dr. Manhattan not done that, then the timelines would have stayed reasonably intact. So that's kind of where I feel about this, is that if they do this, Crisis is happening, and then at the same time, Barry meets with, Barry meets with, other Barry, I guess we'll call him DCEU Barry and DCTV Barry meet, and they have their conversation, and then immediately Barry from DCEU is like, okay, we're going to try this now. So he goes back in time, saves his mother's life. That means the genesis of the universe at the end of Crisis is happening at the same time as Flashpoint. And I think if you do that, you can merge those two universes, and it works pretty well. And then you can do the Flashpoint movie, and it kind of, works. And it gives you, the absolution of blame that they're looking for with Rebirth. Because really, that's what Rebirth's about. It's like, Barry fucked everything up, and Barry caused a crisis-level event by saving his mother's life. Because that's what Flashpoint is. There's like 7 crisis-level events. There's Crisis on Infinite Earths, Final Crisis, Infinite Crisis, Flashpoint, what else was there? Dark Knight's Metal, which shouldn't be in the same tier. And then there are 2 others that I don't remember what they are. But there are 7 of those events. Flashpoint being one of them. Oh, Rebirth, I think, was one of them, too. But when we're going to realign the universes, and we're going to do that, the point of this one is to say it wasn't entirely Barry's fault. There was something else going on at the same time that kind of messed up everything, too. Which is, which, by blaming it on DCTV Barry, does that, it will absolve the blame from the lunatics in the movie who like the movies, who are like, it's way better than the CW. It's like, well, you can blame it on that Barry, and it makes it so that way Barry from the CW has caused not just the season 1 villains by needing to be made into the Flash, not just the season 2 villains by creating the Singularity, not just the season 3 villains by creating Flashpoint, not just the season 4 villains by going into the Speed Force and then coming back, not just the season 5 villains, and not just the season 6 villains, but now also the Flashpoint of alternate Earth and the multiverse being all screwed up again, all caused by Barry Allen from the CW. And I think that's very funny. So we'll wrap up with that, and we have one more thing. SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom, the Rehydrated Edition, which is a new version of the game. Now, I played the game on the Xbox. I have played it all the way through. I've just about 100%ed it, but now I just have to grind the fucking shiny things to get the, what's it called? The last spatulas for Mr. Krabs. Now, here's the thing about this game. It is, I don't want to say dog shit. They didn't change anything, which I get. Like, it's a remaster of the original, so they're not going to change too much. And it's only $30, so I kind of, like, I feel that wasn't the bad thing. Here's the thing, though. The game is glitchy. Very glitchy. The game opens on the Xbox with a glitch, where the screen's half black and the cutscene doesn't work right, and the character models are all over the place. Then it finally works. The frame rate drops in Goo Lagoon are inexcusable in a game that's supposed to run at 60 frames per second in 4K. They didn't rebalance the shiny objects to make them, easier to collect or anything like that. The game doesn't have any difficulty settings. The game is, the game is still just as it was, exactly as it was that long ago, but more glitchy and with less unique animations than were in the original. It's a multiplayer mode, but it's great that you put a multiplayer mode in, and I'm happy for you, and it's great, but expand the base game. Like, make the base game better. Don't sit here and, be like, oh, we're going to do X, Y, and Z for you, but, like, what about making the base game better? And they don't quite do that. So this is a game that, like most Nickelodeon games recently, I would relegate to a purchase while it's on sale, not at whole price. It's not really worth their time to, it's a fun game, and it's like, it shows how much we've progressed, where this was considered the pinnacle of licensed games, like this, Spider-Man 2, me personally, I would say Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets is on that list of top 10, but this is what we consider the best. This is no longer cutting it. This is not what we want from our licensed games. We want full licensed games that feel like a full game, and this does not feel like that. And the game is substantially easier than I remember. Maybe just I've gotten better at playing video games since I was 2006, so like 6th grade. So yeah. So let's wrap up there for today. Next week we're gonna do another movie alongside Dragonheart, whatever the prequel's name is. I'll tweet out what we're doing. There's going to be another giveaway at some point in the near future on Twitter again. And we'll be back with more of that. You can follow the show on Twitter at 30minreview. We'll be seeing what we have going on in the near future. And that'll be next Thursday as normal. So until then, have a great rest of your week.